Brands talk a lot about showing up in culture, but most of them are showing up with a campaign, a moment, an activation, something with a start and end date. And then they wonder why nothing sticks. Today, I'm sitting down with Fernando Loureiro, founder of Galo and director of brand partnerships at SPOTV, the Korean broadcaster. Fernando has spent 15 years on every side of the industry. At Razer, Amphers, Revolution, advising and building brand partnerships across gaming, sports, esports, and live entertainment. In this conversation, we get into which brands have genuinely integrated into culture and why it worked. How to know if a partnership is actually the right one for your brand before you sign anything. How to think of a budget when you buy into an IP, and the ratio between rights fees and activation spend, and where the biggest opportunities for brands right now that they are still missing. Hi, Fernando. It's a pleasure having you on. Honestly, your experience and the diversity of cultures you've seen around the world, from Brazil to New York to Singapore now, to say the least, very interesting and incredible. Today we're talking about cultural marketing is more than just a campaign. And I think just from your experience living across all of these places, not only that, but also the different organizations that you worked with and now with founding Galo, just shows how well equipped you are to talk about all of these things. We're summoning upon a gold mine here. All the answers that you're gonna say, I think everyone should listen to very well. Specifically on this topic, it's gonna be very insightful.
Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be talking to you guys. Well, my name is Fernando. I'm Brazilian, so my heavy accent has a reason for that. Everybody's journey is unique, right? And I like to think that mine, as you said, it created this very global perspective and this very widespread perspective across different points of views within the industry. And that was, that was intentional in many ways. I think a lot of people, when you ask why did you want to work with sports, it all starts back as I was a sports fan and I wanted to be a football player and all of those things. But the day that I fell in love with sports marketing is during college in Brazil. Not going to say when that was, but I went to spend 6 months living in San Diego. And during that time, I went to watch one of the NBA finals that the Lakers was involved in. So I drove up to LA, and as I sat down watching, maybe starting to sound feeling hungry, I want a hot dog. And as you start to dig and you kind of get engulfed about the whole experience, around what you're saying, everything is, wow, the US really knows how to throw a party and an event around a sporting, how to make a show out of a sporting event. And what they did is they were releasing scent of hot dogs from underneath your seat. So once you start to understand, and then you start to see all the business that kind of goes around it. And I was fascinated by it. Obviously, I'm a long life sports fan. And I came back to Brazil, and being somebody who's always I was always used to be in stadiums, following my team, and going to other places. That thing just stuck to my mind. How much more can you do, and how can you kind of bring different brands and partners to be a part of this? So it put something on the back of my mind. And then I was working in sales and marketing. I wanted to redirect my career through sports. So I pursued a few master's degrees. I had one in Brazil, managed to join an agency that was working very closely with teams. After all, we were in Brazil. And I sat in the intersection of sales and marketing. So really starting to craft solutions for brands that wanted to kind of do something with those teams, right? And then very much from the beginning, you start to feel the differences between transactions and value-made campaigns. And one of the first things that I worked on that I really liked is that we launched, and it's up and running today, so it's been 20 years or something, professional volleyball team that competes in the Brazil first division. They became a runner-up. I don't think they have won the National League yet. But we did it as a marketing plan for a company that wanted just to the brand affinity that they had within the city where the plant, the industrial plant was based out of, because they had lots of employees, but a lot of people saw them in a negative light with, a lot of the things that were taken out of the community. So creating such a complex build as a marketing play and something that had at the center the fans and developing the fandom with the city and the connection, it was truly special. From then I moved to New York, where I pursued a second master's with NYU. In New York, I worked on the agency side. I worked in an NGO side. There's a company called Love Football that's They have like a lovely proposition using football, soccer in the US for social development. Then I was there for like a few years. I got a proposal to move to Singapore to work at One Championship. So being on the rights holder side. And for me, it's where like kind of opened door to really diversify my point of view that had been very like agency driven. So then I joined One Championship, spent a little bit of time. From there, I moved to Razer. So I had like my brand experience and very like deep in gaming and very deep in communities, leading the global esports partnerships, or one of the leads in the global esports partnerships teams. Then I was invited to lead brand marketing at Emphas, which is again, going back to the rights holders, like an esports organization with like 7 different teams across like, I think 6 or 7 different markets across Southeast Asia and India. And then I joined Revolution to really help bring the agency to Southeast Asia, to APAC, open the office here, run the operations, and together with Claire, that was like leading the transition from the UK to Singapore. Yeah. And then I founded Galo, which is kind of like the combination of all these experiences as an agency that is committed to building these solutions, kind of bringing all this thing and encapsulating it all in one solution.
I think there are a lot of questions in my mind right now. I don't know where to start, but like the first thing, like how did your perspective like change from being a person that is working more from an agency side to a rights holder side and a brand side? Like, what's the shift between like let's say the shifting in gears? How did you manage that? What was like an eye opener? Like from your perspective, from each experience, like from going from one to another?
I think that, well, and we can add the broadcaster side on that one as well, because as what I'm currently working on a lot via Galo, I'm also serving as the director of partnerships for SPOTV, which is a Korean broadcaster that broadcasts and distributes the content around like some of the biggest sports that we follow here. So all these perspectives, what I see is that seat at the table, it kept moving, right? So each one of those perspectives, the points of views, they have a different role within the ecosystem. So the brands buy, right? The rights holders sell, the agencies translate, and the broadcasters amplify. So every time you sit under like each of those seats, you're trying to do a different thing. And what is very common is that a lot of those things that kind of get lost in translation, right? Because people have different objectives. If you're trying to sell, you're trying to get a value out of this. If you're trying to buy, you're trying to implement as much of your brand into this space. So within every seat, unless you really understand what it is that you're trying to do and how you can really add the value for like the community you're trying to be a part of. And if you're selling, how that sell goes beyond, your target list or your sales target, but it goes beyond to say, okay, how is that going to help enrich my sport, my community? Unless you have that mindset in the room, it's very easy to start dropping value on every transaction that you make. And I think that's the biggest learning as it goes. It's not to put your objectives in second place, but it's really trying to combine everybody's objective and really understand the defense and the sport that have to be central to what you're trying to do as well.
Taking into perspective like everyone's objectives, and I think that maybe you can close deals faster and make more like smooth embedded integrations, I would say, like smoother.
I think that so here's the better like example to do it. Even the way that Razer positions themselves, their tagline is for gamers by gamers. So they themselves position like the company as somebody who was born inside the community, that understands the community. Right. So when Razer comes in, people's expectations is of somebody who really understands what they're after. So there's a level of acceptance, but also Razer only like dwells into things that are endemic for them. So all their partnerships, all their sponsorships, product development, it all sits around like an ecosystem that they belong to. I think the biggest challenge is when you're like a non-endemic brand trying to enter like a new space, how do you really find a place so those transactions can be more smooth, can be a lot smoother, can be a lot easier for people to digest? Because in the end of the day, you need to get some objectives like done right. So if I'm gonna do a new partnership, right? Why am I doing this? Like that's a question you need to ask yourself, like what it is that I'm trying to achieve here. Because the guy who's trying to sell to you, oftentimes, like they have their sales targets on. They have like the numbers they're trying to reach. So as long as you abide by those conditions, like the transaction should be very smooth. I think the switch that you need to turn is more like on the brand side, like who is trying to do it. It's like, how do I get the right value out of this? Not value in terms of pricing, but value in terms of like get the community behind my brand, behind what I'm trying to do. Because once you get the thing right, then the stimulus of the transaction is going to follow through, and the acceptance of your brand. The transaction is not the problem, is what comes right after. How smooth is that moment for your brand and the community you're part of?
The aftermath is the
immediate
part where,
aftermath. Right?
the immediate aftermath.
And then the long-term aftermath as well. But we can get to that.
From a culture standpoint, the other question that I had in mind is like how like this, I would say like also like the shifting gears, like definitely we're talking about three completely different cultures here, like Brazil, New York, and Singapore, like the Southeast Asia market and India. These are definitely different, but at the same time, what would you say similarities between them, which is like kind of wild to even imagine, but like the similar between them, and obviously like the difference in how you act or work based on like these different cultures?
I think so. Forget Brazil, forget New York, the United States. Every place is quite different, but focus on Southeast Asia now. It's an insane, everybody says that, it's an insanely fragmented market. Not only every country is very different from one another, and they are kind of always buckled together within the same region, and oftentimes within the same budget. Every market is different, even within those markets. If we're going to do something in Seoul that's really going to work out in Seoul and make you stand out and be like loved in Seoul, it might embarrass you in Jakarta. So you need to understand those cultural nuances on when you're going to be bringing your brand and a new partnership and activating it in each market. So I think it's a really interesting take, especially when you look into a very fragmented, but forget like the Seoul versus Jakarta comparison. If you talk about Bali and Jakarta, is already very different, right? If you talk about Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, is going to be very different. So even within certain markets, there's still like some differentiators. And that's like the other buzzword that people talk about a lot is like, oh, we need to localize our content or localize our strategy. The localization happens not only through the language or like through some sensitiveness that you cannot talk about in certain places, but you should be talking about in other ones. But the localization talks about like the lingos that belong to specific communities. It might vary between, if you're talking like gaming and esports related, if you're going to go for like a Street Fighter or like a fighting game title, if you're going to go for like a MOBA, communities are very different. Even within those same game like genres, different titles, different communities, they all have like different preferences and different ways of behaving. So you need to understand and be able to identify those things, find those signals. And from there is when you can start to derive a strategy that really resonates with them. So I think that's the first stake in terms of like, how do you really embrace the cultures? Like you need to find a way that you'll become an insider. Like communities are very savvy to pick up when somebody's an outsider trying to force themselves in to belong, and they're going to shut you out, right? So the second they perceive you're trying to fake it, or you are there because my audience is there, like my clients are there, I need to be there as well, they're going to shut you out. You need to find where's the value that you can bring to the table. One of the and I don't want to get too much sidetracked, but on all the brand conversations I have held over the past many years, I always give the same blueprint, which is something that I try to implement on all the conversations when a brand is looking to enter like a new sponsorship or a new partnership, be that in gaming, be that in traditional sports, like whatever like it is. It's you need to look into three things. The first one is authenticity. That's another buzzword. Authenticity is, can I be myself within this community? Can I be authentic with my brand voice, with my brand personality within this community and belong? Or do I need to force a certain way of communicating, a certain way of behaving that's not second nature for me? That almost like I need to create like a side persona to be a part of this. If the answer is the latter, get out. But the other two things are, the first one is pain points. Identify certain pain points that exist within that space. And if you can be the brand that helps fix them, you've earned your place. You've earned your spot. And the third one is on experiences. Can I make people's experience better? Can I add value to like people's overall experience? Because we are getting a lot of like digital fatigue, right? It's so much happening. People are like so overly tuned to everything
Yeah, that's
that
true.
there's a search for like real connections, for like real experiences. One of the trends from WGSN, which is a company that I use a lot and I admire them a lot, that I've identified is this. There's like, is an increase, a turning back to like in real life experiences as a response to this digital fatigue. And that's something we're going to be seeing like increasingly in 2027, right? So how can you make those experiences better? And it can happen like digitally as well. Doesn't mean that you cannot do anything digital. You can, but not in a way that generates more fatigue. Maybe fighting against the fatigue can be like a way to do it, right? Looking for those, if you can have all three, beautiful. But at least one of the three needs to stay true to allow you to make a move.
CMOs are increasingly investing in cultural spaces and moments that are evidently highly considered. From your experience across brands, rights holders, and agency side, can you give us some insight into how the best brands identify the right opportunities, how they decide to move on them, and how they measure impact? It's a big question, but I think yeah.
It's a loaded question, and I kind of gave what my blueprint is, but restating is, again, I think you need to look for one of those three things between authenticity, fixing pain points, or adding on to the experience. But I love the question because it allows us to talk about a lot of other things, right? The best brands, they do like this way. They decide low, they commit for like a long time, and they measure a few things, but they measure them very well. So this is kind of breaking those things down into steps, right? The first thing you need to look for is for the audience truth. You need to understand like what is the audience, who is this community you're going to start to become a part and have a relationship with, right? So understand the audience overlap. If your answer is, I want to be a part of this because my audience is there, wrong, right? Because my consumers are there, wrong. They're doing that for the wrong reason. So what you need to understand is there a role for me to play within this space, which goes back to like, is there a pain point that I can fix? Is there like an experience I can make better? Understand there's a role, because if all you're treating this is because my audience is there, so I need to be a part of, I can like communicate and reach out to them, then all you need is a media buy. Then you invest in money to do like media buy. And that's like the first thing that a lot of brands get wrong. You need to spend time really understanding the community, who they are, what they do, what they like, what they dislike, how they behave. Understand if there's a role that you can be a part of, and then you design a strategy on how you're going to become a part of this. That's the first thing. Then that the best brands do quite well, right? Then the second thing, you need to commit for like a long time, right? In this case, like more seasons you're a part of like any partnership, it compounds the value that you get. Like the longer you are, the better value you're going to get back from this. Because if you treat everything as a one-off, you're not getting the long-term benefit. Brands that have, there was a research, I think, done from Kantar, but it could have been by somebody else, that brands who have high cultural vibrancy over like the last decade, they grow 6 times more, or roughly 6 times more than those that didn't. So this talks about like the importance of having like a long-term strategy. You're doing like a long-term commitment to this. The second thing is, or the third thing, but it kind of sits together like this long-term commitment, is you don't commit budget to buy the rights. The rights is the first step. The second step is, how am I going to activate it? Because it's on the activation that lives all the engagement and the value that you're going to bring to the community, to the space. So how can I really create something that is continuously impacting this community, this space that we were doing? There's a ratio, like recommended ratio is that for every $1 you spend in rights, in sponsorship, you need to invest $2 at an ideal scenario, at least $1 in activating it. So that's one of the things that a lot of brands get wrong. Like they put aside like millions of dollars, sometimes tens of millions of dollars, or sometimes even more, to buy like a sponsorship rights. And then they are left with like this massive list of rights, and the people just tick the boxes. Okay, you need a TVC, put the TVC there, and then the TVC is like unrelated, right? Or like digital content, then you have a content that adds zero value to the community, that's talking about like the product you're going to launch. So you need to get those things very right and really be honest with yourself. Like honesty is the first currency that you need to have internally before you jump into a partnership, and then commit to the activation. There's another research from Lumency which I think is a Canadian agency, but published by WFA, the World Federation of Advertisers, that the global average is that for every dollar spent in sponsorship, there's 81 cents spent in activation. So there's an underserving performance when it comes to this. On top of that, there's about 40%, 43%. I saw the report the other day. I don't even track the activation spent because it just becomes
like a byproduct
incubated by like the overarching marketing spend.
Wow.
You see, it needs being able to measure, being able to understand what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. It's really key. The other thing is, how am I going to measure this? Like, be honest about this. If your answer is, oh, it's reach, it's impressions, don't do it. Right. And I've had conversations about brands in the past that they said, oh, we need it, like, we're looking after reach. And I'm like, yeah, but you can report that you had like XYZ million eyeballs behind your brand. People have no idea what your brand is. You might be anything from like a pizza delivery place, for like a gaming chair, or an architecture firm. It can be like literally anything, like the logo that you guys have in the name. So you need to be able to really understand what it's important for you and what that's going to drive. And there's another aspect that we need to understand. A lot of times you need one person inside the company that's going to fight for you to get it done, to get the deal done. But that person sold it internally on a certain like language and narrative. So that person now committed to deliver that. But if they sold it internally to the shareholders or whoever it was to say, hey, we need to do this because it's going to give us X, Y, Z into, like, say, reach or exposure or engagement. And the guys, oh, that's great. I'll sign off. What are those other guys expecting that reach, those impressions are going to give them? Is it more sales? Is it like a better brand affinity for, I don't know, whatever like it is? Is it like breaking into a new market? So you need to understand the why behind the yes. Because that's how you're going to be able to like really derive the right strategies to make sure that sponsorship works both for the brand and for the community. And you only do it when you have a role to play. Make sure you're always adding value to the entire ecosystem.
You've mentioned doing it for the long term or like a long commitment, but also measuring few things, but measuring it very well. Do you have an example of a brand from the top of your mind that did it very well regarding to that, or like an activation that a brand did it exactly how you said that?
I mean, I have examples. So there's a campaign that I love in game, and I feel very comfortable talking about them because I had nothing to do with it. So I'm not scratching my back. It was a DHL and ESL campaign. DHL has arguably the most boring service worldwide. It's logistics.
Yeah.
Nobody wakes up, oh, Jesus, I want to do logistics. It's a necessary evil. It serves a tremendous role, and DHL is a great company throughout, right? But it's not attractive in any sense.
Yeah, it's a need more than like...
So when they come as a sponsor for like a gaming tournament, like what exactly did they want? And people, they did it so well because they understood a pain point. They're like, those equipments, game equipments are very fragile. So they need special care to go from point A to point B. And hey, guess what? That's what we do. We take things from point A to point B. So maybe let's create something around it. So they became the official logistics partner, whatever the title was. And they gamified it. So in order to connect with the fans, they created gamifications in the arenas and via an app that to help people understand how they were helping the ecosystem, the value that they were adding, the pain point that they were fixing. And it got to a point that people were like applauding them from the stands, chanting like DHL's name. That's so rare. Like another case, and this one is, well, it's not scratching my back because I personally had nothing to do with this, but it is something that a good friend of mine that leads gaming within Revolution created for Chipotle. Chipotle also came in as a sponsor, and what they did was they created, among other things, there was like a promo code. The promo code for them was EWG. Now I have a cheat sheet here. EWGF23. Do you know what that stands for?
Yeah.
EWGF623. There was a promo code that people could redeem.
Actually, no.
But the main thing with this is, for outsiders, it looked very random. But for the community, it stands for like Electric Wing God Fist. And its numpad notation input, which is 623, it can look like gibberish for like whoever doesn't play. And I don't play. So for me, it's a completely random like promo.
Even like a casual player like myself, it is gibberish.
But for the hardcore players, they're like, Jesus Christ, these guys know us. They understand our... So that's how you start to really belong rather than just like advertise within that space. So those are brands that I think do it super well. I think other very quick examples, Heineken is a mastermind on how they do it. I think the Laundromat campaign that they did for the UEFA Champions League final because it happens like halfway through the night in Korea. So they did it in a way that all bars are closed. So the 24-hour laundromats, they kind of transform them into like viewing party pubs sponsored by them. So it's really understanding like a cultural moment within Korea that people go sometimes halfway through the night because it stays 24 hours. There's a massive fandom for like football and Western football. They follow like the EPL and UEFA Champions League, and they got like a very desirable match, and they created it. So they gave people access to something that people were really keen to watch, and they didn't have access to. And that's like empowered and enabled by a brand. Imagine like how those folks feel about Heineken from that point on. So there's a lot of like really cool examples on how brands really understand culture and do something so well that it's those are the things that they are not focused on engaging like I engage like 12 million people within this. It's really focused on creating something that lasts, like a memory or an experience that lasts, and people keep on talking about it after.
Based on everything you've seen from every side of this industry, what is the biggest opportunity of brands in cultural marketing right now that most are still missing?
I think it's the in-between moments, right? Brands are very focused on those marquee moments, like the showstoppers, and then they go silent. So the Formula One season is not like 24 Sundays, right? It's 12 months. So fandom doesn't exist only on game days. It's always on. So you really need to understand how to be present on this, in-between moments whenever you choose like a dedicated platform to be a part of. So today, and again, there's a lot of like data points that I could like talk, but fandom is self-care combined with connection and combined with identity, right? And everybody today, not everybody, I think there's a study from WGSN again, there's a number that's above 90% of people that consider themselves like a fan of something. So we need to understand how to build this connection in a way that is not transactional and it doesn't live exclusively through the marquee moments. Be part of like the lives of the fans throughout like the entire season. The always on is not a buzzword. It's a challenge. There are down moments that like you need to be a part of, that you need to be like feeding the passion like funnel for the fans. You're part of, help them live through the passion for whatever sport or game that they follow and that they're passionate about, that you became a part of. Whenever like there's not something obvious for you to gain out of, you need to be part of throughout the entire time, the in-between moments, not just doing the marquee ones. So I think that's the biggest thing that I see brands consistently missing out. And one other thing that's worth a mention is on women's sports specifically. That's not a trend that's like ongoing now. There's a massive growing thing globally about like the growth of women's sports in investment, in fandom, in everything. APAC is not yet on the same level. So that's like a massive new like growth curve that is about to hit APAC like very, very hard. So be a first mover, understand like the white space, how you can become a part of and jump into like this in between moments in women's sports can really put you like in a really special place.
That's the end of the interview. It's been very insightful, and it's been a pleasure having you on.
It was a pleasure being here. Yeah. Thank you, Saif. I had a really good time.